We have now experienced a very good example of that, and that was the economic crisis of 2008, where the coordinated response between many countries, and that is Western powers and emerging powers in G20, helped to avoid a major economic depression. We need to use that to search for peace, sustainability, and to eradicate power. I have to say that there are many reasons for hope. These reasons are linked with this year, 2015, because in September, the United Nations, all the world's leaders will gather and talk about the MDGs, what has been done and what hasn't been done. And they're going to create a new set of goals, much more ambitious. And this is very important. This action plan is very important because it's going to help eradicate poverty, it's going to help to reach gender equality, it's going to help for sustainable development. And then, after that, we will have a meeting in Paris, and it will be about climatic change. And there, we will reach a stronger commitment than ever. This is why countries and non-governmental organizations are using old and new diplomatic devices. Now, more than ever, thanks to technology and through internet and through new social media, we have learned a very important lesson. And that is that we will not get changes without international cooperation. To reach global governance, and by that I mean economical and also for peace and also for sustainability, we can only reach this global governance through culture. We need to respect flags, we need to respect religion and cultures. And now there is hope because China and the United States, which are the most polluting countries, are now reaching an agreement. And this sends a very important message, and that is the message of hope. Now we know that our fate is a collective fate. Now international relationships are more important than ever, and we know that international relationships will play a very crucial role. And for that, I would like to say to all of you that every task you lead towards diplomacy or towards a more open-minded society will lead to peace, will lead to better rights for everyone, will lead to more democracy, and all that will eventually lead to peace. I always said that no war has ever taken place between democracies. And it is true that a bomb can destroy much for peace, but we all restart again every time it happens. And that is why I would like to thank the ICD to the help they have given towards this talk.
Has dicho eso, ¿no? Has dicho que lo hacías muy bien.
And then one thing. Thank you for the interpreter.
Exactly. Maybe a second round of applause for the translation. Okay. That was the one part you didn't translate, so thank you very much for that. And President Zapatero, thank you very much for, I think, having really laid an excellent framework for us for the interactive discussion today, touching on really the two main key issues that I also wanted to discuss in our conversation now. Primarily, what role does cultural diplomacy have when it comes to global governance? And then also the question you were dealing with towards the end of your reflections, what responsibility do we have as citizens, members of civil society, when it comes to those global challenges, whether it's climate change or many of the other priorities. And I think the two are very interconnected. So I'd love to talk to you right now and ask you a few follow-up questions, specifically about the contributions that you made in the framework of global governance, primarily with the Alliance of Civilizations, where I do see an amazing potential. I think there's still, of course, a lot of work to be done, but I think really the foundation that you laid with the Alliance of Civilizations is for us at the Institute, something really remarkable and something where we see a great potential. So the first question I wanted to ask you is a simple question. where very often there's complex answers, something we've discussed many times before. How would you define cultural diplomacy, or what is cultural diplomacy?
El ejemplo de la alianza, sí, el ejemplo de la Alianza de Civilizaciones me parece que es suficientemente ilustrativo. Es decir, hicimos una propuesta a dos gobiernos, Turquía y España, pero la propuesta, ante todo, era una propuesta para la sociedad civil y, por tanto, de diplomacia cultural. Los 5 foros que ha habido en torno a la Alianza de Civilizaciones y las actividades que realiza ordinariamente la Alianza de Civilizaciones en Naciones Unidas es, ante todo, una actividad de sociedad civil. Hemos conseguido que en esos foros representantes de distintas confesiones religiosas, representantes del islamismo, del catolicismo, del judaísmo, del hinduismo, hayan estado de la Iglesia Ortodoxa, hayan estado muchas veces conociéndose por primera vez y dialogando juntos, haciendo programas juntos.
I think the Alliance of Civilization is a very good example of cultural diplomacy. This was a proposal Spain and Turkey made together, but it was meant for civil society. We have had 5 different forums, and the Alliance of Civilizations activities are for civil society. And our main achievement is that many representatives from different religions have met and have talked for the first time.
La Alianza de Civilizaciones realiza programas fundamentalmente en lo que afecta a educación, movimientos migratorios, medios de comunicación y cultura.
The programs that the Alliance of Civilization has are linked to education, migration, movements, media, and also, the last one, el último?
Cultura, cultura y juventud.
Culture and youth.
Es decir, hay una extensa red de jóvenes de distintas nacionalidades, culturas, religiones, civilizaciones que trabajan unidos, que se reúnen en Nueva York una vez al año y que representan todo una auténtica organización mundial en favor del diálogo de civilizaciones, del diálogo de religiones, del diálogo de culturas. ¿Cuál es la clave de esa diplomacia? Digámoslo así, la clave es el conocimiento, la clave es la aproximación, la clave es descubrir culturas distintas y hacer que esos valores de la diversidad cultural sean valores universales. Por ello creo que la diplomacia cultural debe ir siempre de la mano muy directamente, o donde tiene su gran campo de realización, es en el campo de la comunicación, de ahí que los media estén en el programa de la Alianza de Civilizaciones, y del campo de la educación, es decir, de la gente joven.
There is a youth network in the Alliance of Civilization of different ages, different cultures, and different religions. They meet once a year in New York as a global organization. And the key for this is to find different cultures, to find new values, and for these values to become universal. I think cultural diplomacy works hand to hand with media and education, and that means youth.
Okay.
Thank you very much for those reflections. And maybe as a follow-up question to that, it's not every day that one sees a brand new institution being created in such a major institution such as the UN. I think I know the answer to this, but I wanted to ask you once again, also for the point of view of the audience, why was it that you had the idea to create the Alliance of Civilizations when you did? Was it one particular event in the USA or in Spain, or why create the Alliance of Civilizations and why right at that moment in time?
En mi opinión, la Alianza de Civilizaciones debería dar un paso adelante, un paso más, que es constituir un consejo interreligioso en Naciones Unidas, una especie de Senado de las religiones, para que establecieran un compromiso unitario, una declaración, un manifiesto en favor de la paz y de la condena de la violencia por todas las religiones. Es decir, no ha pasado nunca en la historia, hasta este momento, que el mundo haya visto a todas las religiones unidas, suscribiendo una misma declaración de principios. Creo que este es el paso por el que tenemos que trabajar. Para eso hay que romper alguna mentalidad y hay que hacerlo en Naciones Unidas. Yo creo que si eso lo consigue la Alianza de Civilizaciones, se habrá dado un mensaje de una gran fuerza histórica. Y, por supuesto, se habrá dado más visibilidad a la propia estructura de la Alianza de Civilizaciones. Bueno, en esa tarea estamos trabajando y sé que el Instituto nos dará apoyo.
I think the Alliance of Civilization should make a further step, and that is to create an inter-religion council in the UN to establish a commitment, a special manifest for peace and against violence. The world has never seen all religions working together and making a commitment for the same set of values. If this happens, it has to be in the United Nations. And if we achieve that, this will send a message to the world. And we are working towards that task.
Si me permites, creo que tenemos una gran oportunidad en este momento con el Papa Francisco, por su visión ecuménica, por su visión universalista, por su capacidad de diálogo, como ha demostrado desde que está al frente de la Iglesia Católica.
A good example for this is Pope Francis with its ability for dialogue.
Sí, diría que ha demostrado una gran visión universalista y ecuménica y una capacidad de diálogo desconocida hasta ahora en un líder religioso. Creo que es el Papa desde hace mucho tiempo que más llega y que ha lanzado mensajes muy diferentes de acercamiento a otras realidades.
He has shown to have a very different global perspective of the world. And I think this is the first time a religious leader has been able to reach so many people. He has given very different messages that help towards a better understanding of each other.
Let me maybe ask one follow-up question to the comment you just made, and then I'd be happy to immediately allow you all to ask questions, either from the questions prepared or others. We'd love to make this as interactive as possible. But I wanted to ask you a question as well as a devout Catholic myself, someone who feels very faithful in that sense. I mean, my faith is very important to me, and I would agree with you. I think now with the current Pope, there certainly is an opportunity that we didn't have before. With as much respect as I had for Cardinal Ratzinger and the previous Pope, Pope John Paul II, I think now there is a new chance, but I wanted to ask if you could explain more on that. Why is now an opportunity in the history to look at religion as more of a bridge than it is of division? Because as one looks in the media, as one talks about religion, I've spoken about this with the graduate students, very often religion is taboo. Culture diplomacy, you shouldn't talk about religion. That's a problematic thing. That will increase the challenges, that won't make them easier. And it's really been a taboo topic. And I think in that sense, culture diplomacy, we talk about jazz, we talk about art, we don't talk about religion. But I think, as you were saying, first of all, it's much more urgent today than ever before. And secondly, maybe there's a reason for us to be more optimistic. Maybe that conversation between faiths can happen now in a way that couldn't happen before. So if you could just elaborate on that. Why is now an interesting time in history for us to have this new interfaith dialogue between the major global religions of the world? Why should we be more optimistic now than 10 years ago?
Precisamente antes en la intervención hacía una reflexión. No tenemos una confrontación ideológica entre capitalismo y comunismo como teníamos en el siglo XX hasta que cayó el muro de Berlín, por cierto. No tenemos, afortunadamente, no tenemos en la perspectiva, salvo algún conflicto local, una confrontación por soberanías, como ha sido la historia de los conflictos anteriores, fundamentalmente a todo el periodo de la Guerra Fría, muy especialmente en Europa, muy especialmente por los procesos de colonización y descolonización, digamos, a los que yo en general llamo conflictos de soberanía. Europa fue, sin duda alguna, el gran territorio de esos conflictos de soberanía, imperialistas, como queramos denominarlo. No hay los mapas políticos, insisto, salvo algunas áreas, son estables y no hay confrontación ideológica. La confrontación que empuja a la violencia y a una violencia bárbara que descubrimos casi con el inicio del siglo, con la caída de las Torres Gemelas, con los atentados de Londres, de Madrid, y que ha ido derivando hacia un fenómeno aún más radical, increíblemente radical, violento, bárbaro, como es el Estado Islámico. Sin duda, el eje que une todo ese proceso, el argumento es religioso. Es una yihad. Es la respuesta, en principio, a un llamamiento religioso. Y por eso, en este momento histórico, me parece prioritario que la cuestión religiosa, el diálogo interreligioso, esté en la agenda de toda la actividad destinada y todo el pensamiento destinado a buscar la paz. De hecho, esto nos lleva a un cierto debate en las sociedades occidentales, a un cierto debate, está muy presente en Francia, por ejemplo, sobre el tratamiento de la religión en los estados democráticos, los estados laicos, aconfesionales, que tradicionalmente muchos de ellos han tenido distanciamiento, separación nítida, religiosa. Bueno, yo cuento nuestra experiencia, puede ser interesante. Bueno, voy a contar luego la experiencia porque si no va a ser agotador.
Nowadays, we don't have an ideology clash as what we had in the 20th century until the fall of the Berlin Wall. And nowadays, we don't have a sovereignty clash as the one we had before the Cold War. That was the clash between colonies and powers. Now we don't have that, except for in some countries, but those are some exceptions. The violence we have now, it comes from terrorist attacks as the ones that we saw on 9/11 or in London a few years ago. All of those lead to the jihad, and that is the response to religious call. That is why I think now is a very important time for interfaith dialogue, and that is the response for the search of peace. This leads to a debate about the treatment of religion in non-religious countries, as that is a very important issue in France, for example.
La experiencia es que nosotros en España, aquí hay españoles y lo conocen, sufrimos un atentado terrorista islamista, el más duro, el más grave de nuestra historia. Los autores eran tunecinos, eran marroquíes, eran argelinos, vecinos, que mataron a 192 personas en nombre de la yihad. Nuestro país recibió un shock que coincidió con mi llegada al gobierno de España. Mi temor principal en aquel momento, 2004, era que la sociedad española no viviera un clima de confrontación. Ya había más de 1 millón de musulmanes residiendo en España y que no hubiera xenofobia, ni odio, ni condena, ni aislamiento a las personas que profesaban y profesan en nuestro país la religión islámica. Y hicimos una fundación llamada Pluralismo y Convivencia, que integró a todas las confesiones religiosas y que facilitó que nuestro país, en mi opinión, diera un buen ejemplo de convivencia de los países que han sufrido ataques islamistas, europeos. El más tolerante es España, donde no ha habido nunca acciones contra símbolos, personas islamistas, prácticamente nunca, ha sido España. Y la clave ha sido, desde el primer día, un diálogo interreligioso, de cercanía, de proximidad y de apoyo a la confesión islámica en España.
In Spain, we have a very severe terrorist attack. The culprits of this terrorist attack were from Tunis, and they killed 192 people for the jihad. Spain was in shock. That happened in 2004, right when I was named president of Spain. And my fear was that some kind of clash between Islamist people and the other people could happen, because there were more than 1 million Islamists living in Spain at that moment. And so we founded a council that set up a good example for the rest of the countries that had experienced a terrorist attack. From all of them, Spain is one of the most tolerant. And the key for that is dialogue.
No, I think that's an excellent observation for us all to think about in an age where, as I said, it's not always so trendy to bring religion into the equation. I think it's definitely very, very important for us as we try to develop the field of cultural diplomacy, and as you were saying, try to really implement changes to try to prevent and make it less likely that terrorism or extremism of all kinds can actually occur. But I'd like to now take questions and comments from you. I don't want to dominate the discussion. We've got a very diverse audience. I think almost every continent of the world is represented. So I think Darnell may have a wireless microphone. So I'd ask you please to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. And of course, introduce yourself. Just say your name, where you're from, so President Zapatero can also get a sense of who's here. And we can try to make the dialogue a little bit more interactive. I see the first hand in the front.
Warm greeting to Mr. President. My name is Gamboya Kubu Jibril from Nigeria. I'm here on my PhD program. My questions, I'm happy he has spoken much about religion. And religion is one of those things that is emotionally attached to most of us in Africa. Once you say you want to ignite crisis, it's easier to ignite crisis through religion by undermining the fate of another. So my question goes like this: what does your organization do about that? And we have conducted research as well. We came to find out that some developed nations sponsors crisis in the developing nations. for their economic benefits. Does your organizations look at that angle too? And if it's so, what are you doing about it to stop such a thing? The second question, how does an individual becomes a member of your organization by maybe promoting the good intentions of your organizations from the nation he's coming from? Or is it only left with the government of a particular nation? The third question, I want to know the success so far your organization have succeeded in propagating peace in the entire globe. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por la cuestión. Y sin duda alguna, algunos países de África, antes he hecho referencia solo al Estado Islámico, a ISIS, viven también situaciones terribles como las que protagoniza Boko Haram, con una violencia animada por lo mismo. Y sin duda, las condiciones económicas y sociales influyen. La pobreza es uno de los peores aliados de la paz. La pobreza es uno de los campos fecundos para la violencia. Por ello, cuando antes hacía mi intervención y centraba la expectativa o la esperanza en la tarea de Naciones Unidas, de la Agenda post-2015, y lo vinculaba a esa visión concertada del mundo, lo que estaba queriendo decir es que, sin duda alguna, allí donde eliminamos la pobreza, la miseria, la corrupción, nos acercamos a la paz y evitamos que la desesperación de muchos seres humanos aboque o les lleve a tener en una fe radical y salvadora su respuesta. Yo creo que todo el apoyo que se haga a la sociedad civil, a las organizaciones no gubernamentales, en favor de la cooperación por la paz es absolutamente imprescindible y debe ser una tarea que también aborde, sin duda alguna, la alianza de civilizaciones. Yo he sentido dolor y una absoluta incomprensión por lo que pasa en Nigeria con las acciones hacia las mujeres de Boko Haram. Es absolutamente terrible y hay que alzar la voz y hay que poner los recursos económicos y políticos en favor de una alternativa distinta. Por ello, estemos muy pendientes de lo que pueda hacer, de lo que podamos hacer Naciones Unidas. En este mes de julio, en Addis Abeba, en África, dentro de unos días, se celebra la cumbre para la financiación del desarrollo. Es la primera vez que a esa cumbre, que prepara los objetivos post-2015, van a acudir no solo el FMI, no solo el Banco Mundial, sino todos los bancos regionales que hay en el mundo, con un objetivo de compromiso de financiación al desarrollo, que es pasar de billions a trillions. Y nos vamos a jugar en gran medida la erradicación de la pobreza y la solidaridad con lo que pase y los compromisos que se adquieran. Vivimos una gran paradoja en este momento histórico. No ha habido nunca tanto ahorro en el mundo, tanto ahorro, tanto dinero, por tanto, en el mundo como hay ahora. Y podemos hacer un gran esfuerzo por erradicar la miseria y la pobreza extrema, que será sin duda alguna una gran contribución a la paz.
Thank you very much for your question. In Africa, a lot of terrible situation has been happening. I've mentioned one, but I would also like to mention what's happening with Boko Haram. Also, I would like to say that the economical and social situation is very important for a country. Eradicating poverty is crucial for the search of peace. And that is why I mentioned the 2015 action plan. If we eradicate poverty, misery, and corruption, all of that will lead to peace. This is a very important task for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. I myself have experienced pain for what's going on with the women in Nigeria. We need to support them economically, but also politically. And that is why we need to pay very close attention to what the United Nations are doing. In July, in Addis Ababa, they are going to hold a Sustainable Investment Summit. And that is the first time that not only the IMF and the World Bank, but also all the world regional banks are going to this summit, and they're going to go from investing billions to trillions. And this is a very historical movement we're in. And never before have we had as much money in savings.
Déjame añadir una cosa, ya que tenemos a alguien. Yo estuve en Abuya, en una cumbre de la CDAO, de la Organización de los Países de África Occidental, y hice un acuerdo de cooperación con todos los países, con la CDAO, por $250 millones, especialmente dedicados a la lucha en favor de los derechos de la mujer. Y me he acordado ahora, al escucharte, de aquella cumbre, y fue la primera vez que un primer ministro europeo celebró una cumbre con la CDAO. Me he acordado en Abuya, en la capital, y tengo un grato recuerdo de tu país.
I was once in Abuja in a meeting for the Western African Countries Organization, and in that meeting, we decided to devote $250 million for the fight for women's rights. And that is why I wanted to mention this.
Thank you very much. Let's continue and maybe try to take a few other questions because we don't have so much time. I just want to make sure as many voices are heard as possible. Are there maybe we'll go for the gender balance. Let's take maybe a lady next if we can. And let's try to hear as many different voices. Maybe we can take 2 or 3 questions together and then a response just to make sure we have as many voices, please.
Hello, I'm Chloe from France. I was wondering if you could give a concrete example of a project that the Alliance has achieved so far to promote cultural understanding. You mentioned, for instance, a religious leader meeting together. Did they decide on a project? Did they reach an agreement on something? Did they reach some sort of conclusions? Thank you.
Tradúceme porque no la he oído casi nada.
Le gustaría, quiere saber si hay algún ejemplo concreto de algún proyecto en el que se haya logrado el entendimiento cultural, algún ejemplo concreto dentro de la Alianza de la Civilización.
Sí, hay muchos ejemplos, sobre todo porque trabajando en dos campos que me parecen muy relevantes, uno en el campo de los medios de comunicación, donde la acción de la Alianza de Civilizaciones ha sido preventiva para que determinados medios de comunicación en países occidentales y en países islámicos adoptaran una política de moderación. Y eso ha sido la Alianza quien ha intervenido directamente. 2, en ese proceso de intercambio de becas, esto es algo no confidencial, pero casi confidencial, ha habido procesos de trabajo y de reuniones con personas ex militantes yihadistas que estaban en la cultura de la violencia y que gracias a procesos de diálogo, de empoderamiento de las ideas, de relación con otras culturas, con otros jóvenes, han pasado de estar en la violencia a estar en la paz. Son ejemplos muy concretos que, al amparo de la Alianza de Civilizaciones y de otras organizaciones, se han hecho. Yo diría que son microejemplos, pero de altísimo valor, de altísimo valor. Es decir, yo he enfrentado en mi tarea de presidente de gobierno un grupo terrorista, ETA, en España, y al final el desarme es un desarme ideológico ante todo, cultural. Más allá de que puedas quitarles las pistolas, lo más que las pistolas siempre se pueden comprar otra vez y normalmente la radicalidad se reproduce hasta que desactivas ideológicamente la idea de matar.
There are many examples. Here in the Alliance of Civilizations, we're working in media, and we worked as a means for prevention, for the action that some countries could take in the media sector. And also another example is the fellowship program of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. There has been some meetings from ex-jihadists, that is, people who lived in violence, and thanks to ID empowerment, they now live in peace. And these are very concrete examples taken by the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. They are very small examples, but I think that they're also very important. I happened to disarm a terrorist organization that is ETA in Spain. And I think disarmament is more an ideological matter than physical, because guns can be bought again, but what we have to disarm, what we have to deactivate is the idea of violence in them.
Me permito añadir algo que es importante para esta sala, para las vocaciones que hay en esta sala. Nada hay más poderoso para quitar fuerza a la violencia, para convencer a los violentos que dejen de serlo, que aquellos que han estado en la violencia y transitan hacia la cultura de la paz. El testimonio de los ex-terroristas y su impronta es la más poderosa para lograr la paz. Por ello siempre hay que tener la inteligencia de tener una puerta abierta y una mano tendida a quien está dispuesto a dejar lo que hizo en su momento, a quien está dispuesto a dejar la violencia, porque, insisto, son los mayores activistas que uno puede encontrar en favor de la paz.
I would like to add something that I think that it is important for you in this room. There is nothing more powerful to convince others to leave violence than the experience of these ex-jihadists. And that is why I think it's very smart to keep a door open for those who are willing to leave violence behind, because they are the best activists.
Very good point. We're running short on time, but let's take at least one more question or comment, ideally from another country. We've had Nigeria, France, so if there's maybe another country, or okay. Okay.
Muchas gracias. I'm Louise, coming from France also. You talked a lot about economy impact for the programs settled by the UN. But also the other programs were also small initiatives, though very ambitious. And I was wondering, how can you reach the bigger part of the world population with such programs that are very interesting, very important? How can you reach the vast array of population in the world without economic aid or financial support? Thank you.
Ha hablado del impacto que tiene el programa de las Naciones Unidas económico y también ha hablado de otros programas que ha llevado a cabo que son muy ambiciosos. Y la pregunta es, ¿cómo planea alcanzar a la máxima población posible si esta población no cuenta con los medios económicos o con ayuda económica?
Como siempre podemos ser pesimistas, porque cerca de 800 millones de personas prácticamente todavía se mueren de hambre en el mundo. Podemos ser pesimistas o podemos ser optimistas porque en los últimos 15 años se ha reducido la pobreza extrema en el mundo como nunca antes en la historia. Y hay 800 millones de seres humanos que han salido de la pobreza extrema. Pienso siempre en los datos de China. En los últimos 25 años han logrado sacar de la pobreza extrema a 500 millones de personas. Bien, ¿cuál es la lección que tenemos por delante? La lección es que los objetivos del milenio, de 2000, han logrado avances, sobre todo en pobreza extrema, sobre todo en mortalidad infantil, sobre todo en salud, algo menos en educación, aunque algo, con lo cual sabemos cuál es el camino, lo que eso representaría en ayuda al desarrollo es una parte relativamente pequeña del patrimonio que tienen los fondos de inversión en el mundo. Y ahora entro a la parte estricta de la financiación. ¿Cuál es, digamos, la clave para que de verdad en las próximas décadas, en los próximos 15, 20 años, veamos la erradicación que se puede lograr de la muerte por hambre en el mundo? La erradicación de la muerte por hambre se puede lograr y la extensión de la salud y de la educación. La clave es la participación del sector privado en una nueva dimensión. Es decir, hasta ahora hemos vivido lo que se llama la responsabilidad social corporativa y acciones del sector privado en favor de, determinados proyectos. Ahí está la fundación de Melinda y Bill Gates, que hacen una tarea. Yo creo que las compañías, las multinacionales, deben de ser protagonistas de la ayuda a la cooperación al desarrollo con los gobiernos. Y por ello invocaba la cumbre de Addis Abeba de financiamiento, porque me parece que ahí es donde se tienen que establecer esas bases. Lo voy a decir con prudencia y con humildad, pero mi gobierno fue el gobierno que más dinero aportó a los objetivos del milenio. Aportamos un fondo de 700 millones de dólares para el cumplimiento de los objetivos del milenio. Ese fondo ha permitido que 20 millones de personas sobrevivan, tengan educación, vacunas, agua, que las mujeres se empoderen algo más. Y ciertamente es la tarea de la que uno nunca se arrepiente. Uno cuando está en el gobierno se arrepiente, cuando sale del gobierno se arrepiente de muchas cosas, pero de esa jamás me arrepentiré. Por tanto, hay recursos, sí. Quizá los gobiernos están más comprometidos y, por tanto, creo que hay una gran responsabilidad del sector privado para financiar la lucha contra la miseria, la pobreza extrema y las desigualdades más lacerantes. Y hay un factor estructural, que es cómo se avanza más en favor de la erradicación de la pobreza, de la educación, de la salud, con los derechos de las mujeres. Allí donde las sociedades, los países en África, han hecho una gran transformación en favor de la mujer, se han logrado más avances en todos los factores de bienestar. No podemos olvidar que hoy todavía en el mundo el 90% de las propiedades están a nombre de los hombres. El 90%. Se ha avanzado mucho en derechos, pero en derechos económicos queda un gran terreno. Y desde luego las sociedades más avanzadas del mundo son donde más derechos de las mujeres hay y más igualdad. Las sociedades más tristes, más pobres, más tremendas para vivir del mundo son donde más se margina a las mujeres y donde más machismo hay.
We can be pessimists because there are still 800 million people suffering from hunger. Or we can be optimists because now many millions of people have gotten out of it. I can give you the example of China, and they have gotten 500 million people out of poverty. The lesson to be learned is that the MDGs set by the United Nations have achieved many things. So we know what the way is. And which is the key for the eradication of hunger in the next 20 years? Well, the key, I think, is the private sector. Up until now, we've seen some examples of some private organizations, such as the Melinda and Bill Gates organization. So I think that the private sector have to set an example for the development of aid. That is why I mentioned the summit that is going to be held in Addis Ababa this month. And I have to say this with much care, and that is that my government invested $700 million for the MDG fund, and that was one of the governments that invested the most. And what we have reached is, what we have achieved is 20 million people now survive thanks to this fund. And they survive with education, with better health, with their women are more empowered, and now they have fresh water they can drink. I regret many things out of my presidency, but I can say that this I don't regret. So there are many resources, and I think the private sector should hold accountability. There's a very important factor in a question, and that is, how can we eradicate hunger and poverty? The answer is by empowering women. A lot can be achieved by empowering women. We cannot forget the fact that 90% of the world properties are owned by men. A lot has been done, but there's still much to do, especially in what comes to women's rights. And in what comes to empowering women in male societies.
Well, thank you very much for those reflections. Unfortunately, we're out of time, although I did see a number of other hands and questions. So I don't want to end the discussion, but I want to transition to a different format. We're going to have the dinner reception in the restaurant. Later this evening, you may have seen we have the possibility for some salsa. I believe there's going to be an instruction at 8 o'clock for anyone who's interested, and then sort of a dancing party and reception afterwards. So there should be some good opportunities for informal discussion. So the discussion is not over, but we're just changing the atmosphere. President Zapatero has to do a brief little interview now downstairs, and then we will quickly emerge in the restaurant for all those who would like to join us for the dinner and the reception. But I really appreciate, once again, you taking the time to travel here to Berlin for the main purpose, of course, for our meetings and the development of our programs. But I'm really grateful that we had the chance to exchange this dialogue, also with our students, with the others from the ICD. We really appreciate your time and also, I think, your inspiration. Hopefully, as you were saying, the glass is half full. There's many reasons to be optimistic. There's many reasons, I think, for us to see the responsibility that we have as citizens and also the chance that we have through cultural diplomacy to at least make small contributions that might lead us closer to the end goal that we all would like of global peace and stability. So thank you very, very much. I'd like to ask everyone to please join in expressing our sincere gratitude to President Zapatero for his time and his inspiration. Great. Thank you.